Just a footnote to your introduction. I'm a proud Ghanaian citizen after 30 years in Ghana. Anyway, I've been introduced, talk about Kokrobitey. I started Kokrobitey. I came to Ghana in 1989, and my intention was to create an institute that expanded for Americans and other Europeans the landscape of educational opportunity to study abroad, essentially opening up Ghana as an old world to the Americas. When I came to Kokrobitey, I came to an extraordinarily verdant landscape. I mean, I can honestly say I had never been anywhere that was so lush and beautiful. You know, I got here before lights came in 1997. So I met a whole kind of social ecosystem that worked compatibly. I'd never been any place in my life where there wasn't running water from faucets or electricity or corner shops, you know, sacred water holes and such. But what I did find, and what was curious to me, was to find a whole landscape of people that were living without all these amenities I thought were essential to daily life. And I think too, what was really interesting for me was, I'm not going to say I didn't think things needed to develop, but I was frankly just overwhelmed by an intelligence that I didn't have. I mean, everybody knew everything. They knew their environment. You know, at the base of everything I'm interested in, education is at the base of that. And people here in Ghana 30 years ago, as I said, you know, when you got malaria, you know, somebody knew what leaves you had to use to steam you. If you got a rash, people knew exactly what root they would dig up and how they would manage those things. And as I said, I was completely overwhelmed by an intelligence I didn't have. Over time, it helped me broaden my sense of what it means to be literate. Let me just fast forward and say, needless to say, in the ensuing years, we've had this kind of emerging market economy that has completely changed the landscape. And I'm showing you Kokrobitey village before and now, what it looks like with the emergence of this emerging market economy. And to be frank, aside probably from a few people in the capital that have been part of the big business deals, what I can see most people have gotten from this is trash. You know, the sacred water holes are gone. The kind of social, cultural environment that existed, where, you know, you buy my kenke, I buy your fish, where everybody knew who they were in that community. And it was indeed a community. It was about equality of life. Anyway, we, over the years, Kokrobitey fulfilled its mission of bringing students from around the world for short-term learning programs, primarily using the arts to discover the history and culture of the society. But the longer we stayed, needless to say, in working with local people, it was interesting for me to be more conscious of the intelligence behind traditional skills and crafts and traditional social behavior. So in this video, in this slide, you see students from Princeton University actually making compressed earth bricks from laterite. You know, it's really interesting. This is our campus. Something that's very interesting about Kokrobitey is that when we built the institute, as I said, our goal was to celebrate traditional intelligence. So we built the campus around a series of courtyards, very much like Ashanti people do, so that you're obliged to greet your neighbor when you come out in the morning. We use natural materials, stones, rock. None of these things, when I built it, I even were all sourced from the local material. And we could produce our own earth bricks to construct the community. But in reference to the slide that we saw earlier with the plastics and the other waste mounting to compromise the health and beauty of the environment, we decided, we're obliged also to live where we are. And though we continued our art projects, bringing students from abroad and integrating them with local Ghanaian students so that we could have a really rich cultural exchange, we started to think more about how do we address what's happening with this changing landscape, because what we were beginning to notice is that young people no longer aspire to the occupations of their parents. They didn't want to be fishermen, they didn't want to be farmers anymore, but yet you found them kind of betwixt and between the traditional life of the village and the emerging market economy, and not really having the skills to access that world of the emerging market economy. So we decided to start developing vocational activities, really to kind of, one, build upon some of the traditional crafts and skills, because people here are used to using their hands. Sustainability was a kind of built-in part of the cultural sensibility of people. People use and reuse things purposefully. And so we thought, what could we do to maybe create some jobs, identifying waste as a material. So one of the first things we did was we started with making a recycled shopping bag called Little Steps. And I think too, what was interesting about our training model is it wasn't just enough for us we wanted to try to equip young people to have some conscious skills about navigating this new world. So we focused on things like, critical thinking, the ability to prioritize, time management, also critical self-awareness, so that people could really fall back on knowing that they knew a lot based on what they knew from their traditional environment. And so we started these workshops and the training. Funny enough, I remember the first time I tried to get sponsorship for the recycled shopping bag that was made out of old flour sacks. I took it to somebody and said, wow, that's ugly. And that was kind of hurt my feelings to hear that the product was ugly. But what it did is it made us understand that regardless what you're engaged in, I came to the idea of wanting to produce a product from the kind of political perspective, to solve a problem through training. But nonetheless, we were obliged to think about the elements of design and creating a product that was not only functional, practical, but also aesthetically pleasing. And so we went about that course, again, experimenting with a lot of things. We started batiking, we started, again, scouring the landscape, thinking about other materials that are waste materials that could potentially be materials that could be used for products that could be as well marketable. So in these slides, you see a series of handbags we made. You see inner tubes, water sachets, water bottles, any number of things. And what was wonderful about that process is just that we engaged in a process of experimentation so we could understand and learn something about the different characters and qualities of the materials we had at our disposal. And we got really kind of funky and fun-loving once we discovered the advertising banner. And we made a bunch of recycled bags using old fabrics. We would go to fabric and upholstery shops and get their cutoffs, and we would gather seeds and all other things. And we actually made a series of wonderful bags and had an exhibition in Santa Fe, and the bags were fabulous and people loved them. And that journey, or that step in our journey of the process of wanting to be designers and to create marketable products, taught us a big lesson. And that was that we didn't have the capacity to replicate really any of the models that we were producing. And so we were obliged to think about that, even though the product itself was well received, you know, the reality is when you're producing something, you have to understand your supply chain. You have to be able to know that you can source the materials that are imperative to produce the product that you need to. So continuing on that journey, one of the elements of materials we use that seemed to be durable and accessible was the advertising banner. And I had been traveling in Europe, and I don't know how many people might remember the Swiss Freitag bag. That was a messenger bag that was very popular in Europe for a while. And I remember seeing that, and that helped me think, oh, wow, we could make a bag. And again, based on what's important to us, we thought, well, if we're going to make a bag, what kind of bag would we make? And we decided to make a school bag, because this whole initiative, this whole goal and activities that we're engaged in are all based in education, sharing information that's useful. And so we created the Ghana school bag. And you can see we used Coca-Cola cans, and we used inner tube to make the black star, and, you know, recycled PVC pipes, and it was very, very basic. And what's really amazing about this, we put up an exhibition of about 50 of these bags. And literally, you have to be careful what you wish for in life, because you might get it. Literally, after about 2 weeks after the exhibition, somebody came to us that was starting a school project in Ghana, Omega Schools, and asked us if we could make 30,000 bags. And of course, I jokingly tell people I was never very good in math, but I knew 30,000 times anything was something. So I immediately said yes. And the young sewer, my assistant that was with me as we were exiting the facility, looked at me in a kind of state of awe and asked me, do you really think we can produce 30,000 bags? And I told him I wasn't sure, but I know somebody could. So we do it. Anyway, at that time, we had about 3 machines in an unfinished building. So the whole production looked like something at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. As you can see, there's the young trainees here with the bags and the flexi material. The advertising banner wasn't just useful for making the bags, it also put a roof over our heads. Anyway, we managed to produce the bags. And again, another lesson, I think, again, what education teaches us is to be conscious in your journey, to be aware of what's going on as you move forward, and to be as multifaceted as you can, interdisciplinary as you can. Needless to say, when the people came to ask us to produce that amount of bags, and they knew we were making it out of recycled materials, they really tried to crunch us with the price, you know, with the constant threat, if you don't get the price down low enough, we'll go to China and make it. And so we had to be very creative with how we responded to that. And what I asked them eventually, when I thought about it, I said, gee, do you mind if we have the bags sponsored? And they asked, what did that mean? I mean, can I have a company put their name on the bag? And they agreed. And that opened up another whole range of possibilities. When I thought of 30,000 bags going into the local communities, I went to a fast-moving consumer goods company and asked them, would they like to have their name on a bag that's going into Ghanaian homes? The fast-moving consumer goods, of course, are things like flour, sugar, that everybody uses. And so we were able not only to finish the bag, but to take advantage of that influx of financial resource and to develop educational materials. And so what we did then was to bring our educational team to bear and look at how we could actually put together some basic materials that would teach young people these flashcards about the environment. A is for Africa, B is for breathing, C is for climate change. And I like showing these because it was a really grand effort. It was a great idea. We packaged them in little flexi pouches. But again, on your journey, we learned that if I do these again, it was a kind of multi-purpose card. And we wanted it to be used for a range of from kindergarten up to older kids, because the back of the cards had a bunch of information. But if I were to do it again, for younger primary kids, I probably just have one large image on the front. But again, that's all being engaged in the process. And again, from there, and having the opportunity to work with students, we were able to push our agenda of having the kids more involved in the environment and using waste materials. So kids started making hangers. Again, we put posters in the schools. We started a little garden club so kids could actually grow their own plants in the places. And again, to support the educational material, we actually put together a manual sharing with teachers how they could use the flashcards in a number of ways, games, activities. But again, this whole initiative and the idea of trying to imagine what we could produce, how we could use the skills we had around us, how we could develop new skills and exploit waste as material for product development, set us on a whole range of kind of experimental activities. And we started, again, batiking, playing more with plastics and just playing. And then getting a bit more clever with our play and deciding that we could actually make items that are functional and aesthetically pleasing. From there, another product that was littering the landscape was glass. And Kokrobitey operates, we have as a kind of hub where we have a range of different partners that engage with us. And so we kind of see ourselves as a place that, incubates ideas, brings a range of people from various disciplines that have a common interest in education, sustainability, environmental sustainability, health, well-being, and social development, social entrepreneurship. So we started experimenting with glass and glass bottles. And initially we had the most basic intervention with it, just kind of cutting it and seeing what we could make from a drinking glass to maybe an item that could be used for jewelry making. And then we realized that we could actually take glass bottles and cut them in half and put them together and insert them in building structures and create kind of almost like stained glass windows. Or we could use them for lamps and shades. And then once we did that, we reverted back to the plastic and said, okay, wow, we can also do that with plastics and Heineken glasses. And then we got a little bit more curious about the potential and again, how to add value to a material. And we had a small kiln that we used to do glass beads in, because in Ghana, glass beads is a big part of the cultural landscape, and they're often made with crushed, powdered glass from recycled glass. But we decided we'd like to see if we could slump. And so we simply took a bottle and laid that bottle on a curved surface and let it slump and take a shape. And we had a really kind of nice condiment dish that also became another product that encouraged us to be more creative and interactive, brainstorming with what's possible. And again, things just go from one step to another. After putting up these exhibitions and interfacing with a number of people, finally an oil company came to us, Cosmos Energy to be specific, and asked if we would help them teach people in the Western region about oil. And needless to say, that almost gave me a heart attack. I thought, gee, being sponsored by an oil company is like dancing with the devil. But I thought about it, and we had, my background as an educator, I've always been engaged in thinking about educational materials, and as an artist, thinking about how do you make materials. And we thought, okay, why can't we extend that facility to want to make things, to making educational materials? So we said to them, and we reasoned with ourselves, if we we didn't take the money, somebody else would. So we could consciously think about what is it we could do that could really be useful. So we said we would do it as long as we could work with young people, also being engaged with a literacy project. So we started the Makers Workshop in the local village. We built, as you saw in the previous slide, a community center where we trained people. And we took as much waste material as we possibly could, transforming it into useful materials. We took what they call the kufor gallons, which are just oil gallons, and we made shelves out of them. We made little automobiles so kids could learn traffic safety. You know, we tried to think about all the things in education that are important, were lacking in the traditional environment. Just creating hands-on activities and organized environments for children to learn. And even cutting up the flexi material that once was a bag and using it, you know, to teach phonics and literacy, helping kids get out of their seats and be mobile. These materials, even though they have letters on them, they can be drawn on. It's like a whiteboard, so the kids could have water-based magic markers and they can be washed off. And so there's your, you know, confronting the whole idea of having materials in the classroom that could be used, not worrying about paper and so on. And then we actually formalized all of this into some text material. We put together a guide for teaching phonics, because what we learned generally in the village communities, that most children speak their traditional languages at home, and only learn reading or learn the letters of the alphabet through visual recognition. And so most kids didn't know the sounds that letters made. So we tried to address that in our Teacher's Guide to Phonics. And another thing we did was to tell the story of how oil is discovered and how it's extracted. And like anything in life, I think, again, educated people are always conscious that there's constant tension between all things in life. There's nothing that's all good and there's nothing that's all bad. So we tried to sit down and ask ourselves, what's good about people who explore, who are in the oil business? Well, there's a lot of interesting things. They're very well organized, they're very skilled, they're very methodical. You know, there's lessons about geography, there's lessons in science. And obviously they're curious and scientific, and they learn to ask questions and solve problems and make decisions. And so when we told the story about oil, we really made the story about a little girl, Afia, who, learning about the process of oil and oil extraction, learned how grievous it is to the environment, but most of all, she learned how to ask questions. You know, so she learned that frytol, cooking oil, was not the same as crude oil, and she continued to ask questions, and I think that was a reasonable lesson. As we progressed and we got more and more into really thinking about design and development, we built the Alero Olympio Design Center as a hub to foster our activities in design and to give us a real base so that we could attract the kind of participation in individuals that were interested in the kinds of activities we were interested in, and providing them a real base where there was space to learn, to study, to research, and studios that could support it. And so we developed our bi-monthly education group committee. We developed our studio facilities, and we began to really focus on product development across a range of things, from furniture to household products to fashion. And so our young designers came forward with us and developed their skills in sewing. You know, we have partners, as I said, that we work with, and one of our most dear partners is Like-Minded Objects in New York, Elise McMahon, and she comes yearly. She actually runs our design department. And here's an example of a design project that used 3 bicycle rims to produce chairs. And so this is a completely recycled project. There's 3 bicycle rims. And then we're using used recycled denim with traditional kente fabric and batik fabric. And then, it just goes on and on. Those are, I think, washing machine tumblers, and the lamps are made out of brake routers and old poles and denim materials. And so we extended that experimentation with the denim, which again goes back to the original challenge we had about being able to identify a source of material that we have available to us and that we wouldn't have to worry about a supply chain. And denim is one of those things. Obviously, there's always used jeans. And again, I guess what I neglected to mention is along this journey, we began to learn more and more about where the waste material is coming from, how much waste material there is in the environment. And we learned that Ghana, well, second only to oil, used clothing is probably the biggest polluter in the world. And Ghana alone receives so much used clothing that about 1 million pieces go into landfill just around the capital on a weekly basis. Horrific thing. But the good thing is we knew we could definitely source used jeans. And here you can see the rugs and the furniture and the other things. And then using it, again, taking that material apart and seeing all the uses you could exploit. So the strip of the jean we use as a weaving material. And again, building on people's traditional skills, using a waste material as a waste product, waste as a material for product development. And then seeing all the different ways. I think on that last slide, you saw the strips that come on the side of the jean. Here's the waistband that we cut. And actually, those strips can be really interesting. It's almost like kente fabric. Anyway, finally, we got to a point where we decided we really wanted to focus on the use, to go beyond just using denim, to see what other materials were there. One, the denim it was a great material, and we were making great things out of it, but they were primarily export items because it's hard to wear denim and the coats and the jackets that we were making in the tropics. And so we wanted to identify other material that we could use. And so we came up with the idea of creating a fashion brand called Wote, which is a Ga word for let's go, Wote. And started looking at exploiting the use of the jean material. What are all the ways in which those materials could be taken away, and hopefully having some impact on the amount of used clothing. I hope you're enjoying our little figures there. We like to think young people and all people, have a thought in their head and are going to be wowed by all the challenges and possibilities. And this little character goes across the spectrum of activities we do, and even our reading rangers, activities, our literacy programs, our logos for the clothing and development. But anyway, the idea of having a thought in your head and engaging yourself in processes to exploit the use of materials, and then literally getting your hands into what you're doing along with your mind to make the proper associations and engage in the kind of experimentation one needs to bring to a collection together. Because like I said, even though we came to fashion and product development and art making from a kind of political perspective, the obligation still, once you enter that arena, is to behave like a designer, to hone your craft and develop your skills so that you can ensure a quality product. And there's our Wote symbol. which I have to say I like. And this is the last slide, and this one here, that first Wote collection, you can see how we started treating the denim. And again, we wanted to remind ourselves that, we really want to see how we can facilitate a dialogue about culture, and how we can constantly be inspired by African culture, because I know part of that traditional, let me speak about Ghana, traditional Ghanaian culture, the intelligence embedded in that culture has all the information we need to begin to imagine what a sustainable future looks like. And I love showing these last pictures to see how a waste material is actually elevated to the point of taking its place in a showroom through kind of conscious design and intent. So with that, again, as designers, we're obliged to stay in the game and to consider the creative process and to be versatile and contemporary. So we started, again, identifying other materials that would be as plentiful and perhaps more friendly material for the environment in which we're working, because I really want people in Ghana, on the continent, to find our products and designs useful and exciting. So we decided to begin to look at the men's shirts. Again, Western men's shirts there's millions of them on the ground. And so we started taking them, and again, looking at all the ways we could begin to experiment with natural dyes, begin to think about cutting and matching and dyeing, imagining, what is it we want these materials to say? Well, of course, we for me at Kokrobitey, I think that, again, referencing education, at the base of everything we do is thinking about human kindness, our relationship to one another and our relationship to the environment. So even in our discussions, when we're doing our mood boards and thinking, about hands and leaves and limbs and beings and bodies and spirits and health and well-being, we try to see how those images somehow find their way into our collection. And so this is the second Wote collection. Should I say more about the collection? Hannah doesn't think I'm talking enough about the clothes. Okay. I mean, I think obviously again, this kind of fusion between European, the kind of strict patterns of the European shirt with the kind of dynamic, diverse, modern energy of African fabrics, and simplicity at the same time. This tension between, pattern, design, and simple form. I mean, if Africa is nothing, it's definitely the mother of modern art. And so we tried to look at some traditional forms, like this piece on the right kind of echoes a northern kind of Batakari man's wear that we've kind of feminized and paired with trousers from European shirts. And again, just having some fun with the materials and with the flow of materials, with the kind of communication between the batik and the shirt material. And we managed to even get our hint to where we're going in the future by integrating the denim that we started with the traditional men's shirt. Do you want to say anything about the fashion? Am I going the right way? Or is there a key word I can put in there? And the key word for me is funky, functional, comfortable, and a little bit edgy. Versatile. Because that, again, that tells you about Kokrobitey a little bit. And I mentioned earlier, I referenced like-minded objects. As we go through the presentation, I'm going to introduce now Bubu or GC, and then you'll learn more about our forest project and our educational programs based around organic farming and other things. But right now, let me play. I've got about 5 minutes of Bubu, OGC, and I'd like to play that for us. Can you turn that on?
Hi, my name is Bubu Ogisi, and I'm creative director and a fiber artist from Nigeria. I'm currently collaborating with the Kokrobitey Institute of Design with the incredible Auntie Renée, and we will be working on a few projects which include eco-innovative ideas that have to do with waste and textile innovation. So we'll be creating different pieces using recycled materials, recycled clothing, plastic, recycled denim, recycled fibers also, and as well as actual natural plant fibers. The whole idea for this project is to bring everyone together in terms of understanding more about the world of sustainability through waste and how to sort of transform the idea of fabrication from what we actually have consumed already and back into this eco-innovative idea of clothing or fiber art or tapestry. The whole idea is to sort of make people understand more about what we essentially want the future to look like in terms of how we use the waste around us to sort of recreate this world. We imagine using the processes of weaving, crocheting, and hand detailing. Everything we're doing is going to be informed through our hands. So basically, we want to incorporate machines that have no electrical use and sort of figure out how we can create using our hands and our legs in unison. And that's what this project is about with Kokrobitey Design Institute. We're going to be having a workshop I guess twice or once a year to sort of highlight these different processes in which people can create different types of tapestries or tapestry art using materials such as raffia or bark cloth and cotton, silk and sisal, and plastic as well, meaning mostly LDPE, low density polypropylene, polyethylene. So the idea is basically that, and I really look forward to this workshop and this collaboration, and we see it as a long process because I guess the idea of sort of fabrication or the idea of textures has sort of been removed from our minds from a colonial point of view in understanding that not everything has to be brand new, and everything around us can also be used for a different purpose, to putting aside what it was used for previously. I guess we're also thinking about the environment and saving the environment in this form of sustainable design, which is highly sustainable because we're using plant fibers as well as waste materials to sort of create this new world of understanding for everyone to exist within. And by this project, we hope to sort of build bigger and bigger projects with more and more people and engage with more and more communities within and outside of Africa. an essential part of what this project is about is also in terms of decolonizing minds and understanding the fabrics or types of fibers that exist outside of what we're hypernormalized or what we're used to, in essence, and how we can sort of combine these different ideas, how to combine synthetic with natural, and seeing how these two balance each other, essentially through different ways, and incorporating natural dyes also into bringing out the colors or the vibrancy that exists within tapestry making, and finding ways to sort of bring people into this new world, I would say old world that is sort of now coming back, and sort of redefining the future of what sustainable design essentially is. As a continent on our own, we've essentially always been sustainable in every practice, in every way, and seen as the colonial structure was to hand down used clothing as a form of payment to different workers. This is also a deeper story in terms of that situation and how we sort of redefine what we've been giving or what we have essentially around us, and how we sort of bring that back into the world that is, and how we change the future of whatever it is that we're existing in right now. So building and taking from the future into the present to create a new future. I guess taking from the past, present, and bringing that into a new future of design.
Fantastic. That's Boo. Amazing. And I love how her well, I love our collaboration, and I love it that it exists on so many levels, in terms of when you hear Boo talking about decolonizing minds, old world, new world, and defining the future. I mean, part of that at Kokrobitey, since that has gone into really establishing our organic gardens. This all goes back to that first interface I had coming to Ghana, just being so overwhelmed by the intelligence people had, you know, how people were so conversant with their environments, how they knew everything about, the flora, the fauna, its practical uses, its medicinal uses. You know, that was so amazing to me. And even though I was confronted, as I said, with an environment that was absent of all the amenities I thought were essential to daily life, I don't ever remember thinking of the people as poor at that point. In fact, and I'm not saying I didn't think things needed to develop, but I didn't think of people as poor. If anything, I think what it did was help me understand and appreciate a literacy that I didn't have. Okay, a literacy that I think is so fundamental, and that is knowing what nature gives you and what you're obliged to give it in return, to know your natural environment. For me, that's a primary literacy. I always thought literacy was confined to the ability to read, write, and comprehend the written or spoken word. And I now know that's a great literacy, but it's a secondary literacy. And you won't have much to talk about if you can't survive, or read about, or write about, or research. Anyway, here's our team again, Kofi Deborah. He's runs the farm project. And this is the team. You're seeing Elise on the right, who is from Like-Minded Objects, based in Hudson. She was doing a master's degree at Parsons, where she met young Trivo at the right, who happens to be in oil logistics. But obviously he knows that that's the past and some place he doesn't want to be. And so he was taking a master's degree in sustainable business. And that's where they met. And somewhere in their conversation, in order for him to kind of make that transition and be more conscious of the environment, he decided he wanted to take some of the resources he had and plant 100,000 trees around the world. Elise immediately called me, and I like those those digits, those 3 zeros at the end of anything. And she said, do you think we can find somebody to plant 100,000 trees? I said, well, I think so. And indeed we did. I started searching around and managed to find young Kofi Deborah, who had OKO Forest project up in Kumasi. And we put our heads together and said, let's see if we can form another group, OKO Forest. And so now we managed to get, I think it's 15 cents on the dollar for education. And so the first year we did 5,000, the next year we did 27,000. This year we're up to 50,000 seedlings that are getting ready to go in the ground. And what I like to encourage always, people say, oh, gee, you're doing this, you're doing that, you know, what are you doing? What I can tell you very clearly is that it's all connected. You know, and I think once we get out of this sense of departmentalization, how do you say that word? Departmentalization. Okay, don't do that. Departmentalization. You know, then it opens you up to understand just how connected. You know, it's like the human body, the earth, all of us. It's all connected. You know, humankind, our relationship to one another, and our relationship to our environment. And this is really amazing because the actually having the farm and the work that they're doing, and again, just exploring all the ways that sustainability and development can take place. Again, I'm going to reference back to Boo, and that is, I know that traditional African culture, the intelligence in those cultures, I can speak for Ghana specifically, is a blueprint for what a sustainable world can look like in the 21st century. Everything is here. And I like to tell people, if I talk about Africa more, I don't believe any culture has a monopoly on beauty. But if I talk about it more, it's because it's been talked about less. And it's imperative that this intellectual and intelligence becomes part of the broader discourse in the world. We're very fortunate right now to have an intern with us who's undertaken an amazing project, Hannah, who's sitting right next to me here, who's expanding our activities and developing educational content and really looking at documenting the intelligence that we're talking about. And she did a really very basic but useful research, and that is to go about the chore of identifying about 130 species of flora in the local environment. What was more exciting about that was the interviews she did with the local community, asking them about what do they know, where did they learn about plants, you know, and if you look at this graph, you can see from their parents, their grandparents, their African forefathers, other locals in the community, and only one person said they learned it in school. It should tell us something about our responsibility to be active players in this world of intelligence and knowledge sharing. And what I like too is the statistics and the answer she got when she asked, why do you think plants are important? And the first thing the majority of people said was because for medicine, fresh air, oxygen, shade, food, first aid, protection, mitigation from storms and flooding, beautification, daily immunity, economic benefits, homes for other organisms, air purification, protection from animals, natural medicines compared to pharmaceuticals. And I know as an African-American and someone that was born and raised in the States, you'd be hard put to do a survey like this and have the majority of people say that medicine is the first thing they think of when they think of plants. We'd be lucky if people said, you know, that it purified the air, but most likely they'd say, you know, looking at their manicured lawns, that is for beautification. I'm going to kind of come to a point where I'm going to end now, so we'll have some time for questions, but I'm showing the picture of Dr. Asaria Poku. And I'm showing his picture because he's a marvelous, he has a large forest reserve here. He's been a proponent of the importance of African intelligence. He wrote a magnificent book called Traditional African Proverbs. And one proverb that he said that always resonates me is that no one man's arm can embrace the baobab tree. And for me, what that means is that no one culture has all the knowledge we need. And I, as a proponent of an African Renaissance, meaning someone who is encouraging us to remember, people on the continent to remember traditional skills and traditional knowledge so we can assume the responsibility of sharing our voice so that we have a more nuanced and textured view of what the world could and should look like. No one culture should dictate policy, principle, social structures, economic structures. That does not belong to one culture. It's our duty to share our voice and to work together. I'm finished.
Wow, thank you so much, Renee. That was listening to it again was just amazing. Thank you very much.